3 months into my afterlife career, and I was already due for a performance review. My supervisor, a being who resembled a nervous spreadsheet, had warned me twice about excessive engagement. Apparently, guiding souls from their moment of death to the glowing processing elevators required the emotional warmth of a parking kiosk. My job was to verify their name, scan their life file barcode, and usher them along. But how could you not talk to them? Mrs. Ethel from Winnipeg wanted to know if her pug, Muffins, would be okay. Carlos, the teen who'd bravely donated his organs, was shaking so badly his spiritual form was flickering. Today's assignment was George. His file was thin, age 78, cause, cardiac arrest, societal output rating, low. He stood by my cubicle, a translucent figure in a worn cardigan, looking confused and gentle. "Welcome, George. I'm Stella, your transition associate. How are you feeling?" "A bit lost, dear," he said, his voice like rustling leaves. "The garden?" "I was just worrying about the hives. The new queen was settling in. We weren't supposed to linger, but his file was so empty." "You kept bees?" His face lit up. "Oh, yes. For 50 years. The honey? I'd give jars to the children at the home." He meant the foster home nearby, he explained. He'd mentored kids there for decades, teaching them about bees, about patience. None of them knew he was gone. The system's notation of low societal output burned in my mind. They'd quantified a life spent planting quiet kindness in forgotten souls. A red prompt flashed on my screen, "Proceed TO processing. Delay detected." I made a decision. A reckless, human one. I minimized the prompt and opened an afterlife appeal form. "George, tell me about your favorite kid you mentored." As he spoke, about a shy girl named Liza who'd become a botanist, I typed furiously. Unmeasured ripple impact legacy. Subject's value lies in nurtured potential of others. Request holistic reevaluation. I submitted it. For a glorious second, I felt righteous. Then, the entire sector's lighting shifted to an urgent, pulsing amber. Alerts chimed like digital panic. My appeal had snarled the workflow, creating a cascading delay for 147 souls behind George. My neighbor, a grim reaper named Clive who preferred post-life logistics coordinator, swiveled in his chair, his skeletal jaw agape. "Chen, what did you do?" "The main dashboard is having a fit." The air in the vast office space dropped 10 degrees. A scent of ozone and old parchment washed over the cubicles. Every click of a keyboard, every whisper, died instantly. He simply appeared at the end of our row. Matthew. The CEO of death himself. He wasn't monstrous, he was devastatingly, impeccably perfect. A suit that seemed tailored from the void between stars, hair as dark and neat as a closed coffin lid. His eyes were the pale gray of a winter sky just before snow, utterly devoid of warmth. "They found me immediately. JSTHN. His voice wasn't loud. It was calm, clean, and cut through the silence like a scalpel. "My office. Now." The walk felt miles long. I could feel the pitying and terrified stares of my colleagues. His office was what I imagined, obsidian floors, a wall that was a single window looking out onto the star-dusted void of the afterlife, a desk of clear glass with nothing but a single data slate upon it. No personal effects. Not even a plant. Efficiency, personified. He didn't sit. He stood by the window, his back to me for a moment that stretched into an eternity. "You bypassed 7 established protocols," he stated, finally turning. His gaze was a physical weight. "You valued a subjective anecdote over quantifiable data. Your actions cost this department 47.3 standard processing minutes. The cascade disruption to the downstream alignment schedule will require 15.8 employee hours to correct." I clasped my hands to stop them shaking. "With respect, sir," I started, my voice thankfully steady, "you're measuring the wrong things. George's life had value that your spreadsheet didn't capture. What's the point of an eternity of efficiency if we erase what made souls human in the first place?" He blinked, once. A slow, deliberate motion. My argument hadn't angered him, it seemed to confuse him, as if I'd spoken in a dead language. "Sentiment is not a metric, JSTHN, he said, his head tilting a fraction. "It is an unpredictable variable. It leads to entropy. To chaos." He picked up the data slate, tapping it. "Your profile indicates a propensity for illogical advocacy. You are reassigned." Effective immediately, you will report to the archives of unprocessed quandaries. Perhaps cataloging centuries of documented feelings will illustrate the inefficiency of your position. It was a dismissal, a burial in paperwork. Defeat washed over me, cold and heavy. I turned to leave, the fight gone. As my hand touched the cool, obsidian doorframe, I muttered under my breath, the words slipping out on a tide of bitterness, a real pioneer of workplace culture. No wonder turnover in limbo is so high. I left, not daring to look back. I didn't see the way his stylus hovered, frozen, over the slate. I didn't see the faint, bewildered crease that appeared between his perfect brows. No one had ever criticized his management. It was an anomaly. And Matthew's entire existence was built on resolving anomalies. The archives were the afterlife's basement. A cavernous, silent space where light came in dull, amber shafts, illuminating endless shelves of spectral scrolls and flickering terminal screens. The air smelled of lost time and forgotten stories. My task was simple: sort, file, and do not engage. My first day was pure despair. My second, simmering resentment. By the third, my old habits kicked in. I couldn't help but read the cases. Here was the philosopher who'd argued himself into an ontological paradox and was now stuck in a logical loop. Here were the records of 9 cats, all claiming the same 9th life. And here, a file that made my non-existent heart ache: 2 lovers, Juliet and, well, let's call him Leo. They died a second apart in a tragedy, but due to a celestial filing error, arrived years separated. He'd been processed and moved on, she was still here, waiting in a loop of their last moment. The sheer, cold waste of it all ignited something in me. I started organizing. Not by the standard alphanumeric codes, but by themes. Unrequited passions. Unfinished art. Acts of quiet courage. I created a cross-reference system, tagging files with my own notes. I even started a humble, priority re-review pile, though I had no authority to do so. In a quiet corner, I found his case. The violinist. 1802, his name was Elijah. He'd made a desperate deal with a minor reaper for one last concert to inspire his protégé. The music had been so sublime it had momentarily bent the rules of reality, throwing his soul's resonance out of alignment. The file's resolution was stamped, eternal aesthetic appreciation loop, non-disruptive. I found the loop. It was a shimmering, silent pocket of the archives. There he was, forever playing his violin, the bow moving, the notes pouring out into absolute silence. He was playing to no one, for all eternity. It was the most efficient punishment imaginable: contain the disruption by letting it play to emptiness. It was horrifying. I sat at my terminal, my fingers trembling. I opened a new log. Observation: subject Elijah. Resolution is efficient but constitutes a profound isolation. Suggest potential for rehabilitation via. I didn't finish. What could I suggest? I had no power. Weeks bled into a strange, timeless routine. I began to hum an old, cheesy pop song from my mortal days while I worked. It fought the silence. One night, as the archives dimmed, I was deep in sorting, singing under my breath about love and telephones. Do you materialize just to startle people, or is there a departmental memo on atmospheric entrances I missed? The voice came from behind me. I yelped, fumbling a scroll that passed through my fingers like mist. Matthew stood there, a darker shadow in the dimness. He'd heard me singing. Mortification washed over me. He ignored my flustered comment. Your reorganization has increased the archive system clarity score by 300%, he stated, as if reading from a report. He took a step closer, peering at my open terminal, at my tagged categories. Your buddy system, proposal for new arrivals. Elaborate. In quantifiable terms. This began our strangest conversation yet. He stood, impassive, as I explained how pairing a confused new soul with a recently processed, stable one could reduce fright-based delays. He countered with data on resource allocation and training overhead. I argued for long-term smoothing of the transition curve. He cited initial investment metrics. You can't spreadsheet a soul, Matthew. I finally burst out, exasperated beyond care. The use of his name hung in the dusty air between us. A profound, resonant silence followed. It wasn't the silence of the archives, it was the silence of a struck chord. His winter-gray eyes held mine, and for a fraction of a second, I saw not calculation, but a flicker of pure, unprocessed surprise. My reports, he said, his voice lower, almost tentative, indicate your proposed method, while unorthodox, could reduce post-transition dissonance by an estimated 15%. That is, a measurable gain. Then he was gone, vanishing as quietly as he'd come, leaving only the scent of ozone and a whirl of confusion in my heart. The next morning, on my desk, a simple slab of spectral granite, sat a mug. Not the standard issue Afterlife ceramic. This was my old mug from my apartment, the chipped one with the silly pun about caffeine. It was full of steaming, perfect coffee, exactly how I used to love it. No note. I lifted it, a slow smile breaking across my face. It was the most illogical, inefficient, and wonderfully personal thing that had ever happened here. Our dance continued. He'd send a terse memo, review attached data on spectral backlog in Sector 12. Propose solution. I'd send back a detailed plan, ending with, P.S. Of welcome sign might help. Low-cost morale boost. His next memo would end with, query, why do humans value surprise parties when they inherently disrupt scheduling? It was his version of flirting. And it was working. But Elijah, the silent violinist, haunted me. I filed a formal petition, staking my newly precarious status on it. Request reprocessing of Sol, Elijah, 1802. Offered to personally guide him to Sol Leo 1802's last known sector, Elysian Gardens, Wing 7. Goal, resonant realignment. It was a massive ask. It required pulling a soul from a stable loop, rerouting a guide, me, and accessing a secured sector. The denial was immediate, and the Board of Eternal Audit was copied. The final memo from Matthew was not a query. It was a directive, cold and flawless. JSTHN. Your petition is denied. Report to my office for contract termination proceedings. The warmth from the coffee mug bled away, replaced by the original chill of the archives. Termination here didn't mean firing. It meant being unmade. My consciousness dissolved into a non-cognitive loop. I'd pushed too far. I'd gambled a soul's peace for my own sentiment, and I'd lost everything. I waited in Matthew's office. The view of the void was no longer fascinating, it was a preview of oblivion. I smoothed my simple gray JSTA tunic, trying to find some dignity. I would not beg. I would state my case for Elijah one last time. The door whispered open. Matthew entered. He didn't go to his desk. He stood before me, and for the first time, he looked, not cold, but strained. The perfect symmetry of his tie was very slightly off. The board is convening, he said. His voice was tight. I am to present the rationale for your termination. I nodded, my throat too dry for words. They require a cost-benefit analysis of your methodology. He paused, looking not at me, but at the star-dusted void. I cannot provide one. My breath hitched. He continued, each word seeming pulled from a deep, unfamiliar place within him. The primary variable you introduce resists quantification. It operates outside established parameters. You introduced a soft power variable. Morale in your former sector is up 22%. Soul self-reporting of transition readiness has increased. Long-term systemic friction has decreased. He finally turned his winter gray eyes to me, and the ice in them was melting into something turbulent, vulnerable. You measure in kindness, Stella. And it works. He had used my name. Not my employee ID. Stella. I presented the data to the board, he went on, taking a step closer. The air didn't grow colder, it grew still, charged. I informed them that terminating you, while logically sound by our oldest metrics, would be a profound error. That we have optimized for speed, but forgotten our core function, careful transition. What did they say? I whispered. They asked for a counterproposal. And you gave them one? I did. He lifted his data slate. On it, I saw a proposal title, Pilot Department, Soul Integration and Care. Director, Stella Chen. Oversight, Office of the CEO. They have approved it. On a probationary basis. The relief was so intense my knees felt weak. You defended me. I presented observable data, he said, but the old mantra lacked its force. He was looking at me as if I were a complex equation he was finally on the verge of solving. You defended me with feelings, I insisted, a smile breaking through the tears I hadn't realized were forming. He winced, as if the word was physically awkward. Your methods are illogical, disruptive, and deeply infuriating, he stated, his voice dropping to a husky murmur. He took the final step, closing the distance between us. You have caused me to recalculate everything. A long, breathless pause. Including my own parameters. The romance in his words was buried under layers of bureaucratic jargon, but it was there, shining through. It was the corniest, most perfect thing I'd ever heard. Is that your way of saying you like me? I asked, my heart hammering against my ribs. It is my way of saying you are a necessary anomaly, he breathed, his gaze dropping to my lips for a fleeting, electric second. And I wish to continue observing your effect. Permanently. He didn't kiss me. The gesture was too human, too sudden for him. Instead, he extended his hand, palm up. On his pristine skin, light shimmered and coalesced, forming a document. I leaned close to read the elegant, glowing script. Cohabitation and mutual impact contract. Parties, Matthew, designation, CEO, Afterlife Department, and Stella Chen, designation, Director, SIC. Term, perpetuity. Clause 1, to continuously disrupt and optimize each other's systems. Clause 2, to introduce illogical variables, see, kindness, surprise, coffee, for joint study. Clause 3, to share all data, in perpetuity. A laugh bubbled out of me, pure and joyful, echoing in the silent, star-flecked office. It was a contract. Of course it was. The most romantic, corny, bureaucratic proposal imaginable. I placed my hand in his. His fingers closed around mine, and his touch was not cold. It was cool, steady, and real. I'd want an addendum, I said, smiling up at him. About coffee. And maybe mandatory joint fact-finding missions to the mortal realm. Beaches. Preferably with sun. A sound escaped him, not quite a laugh, but a soft exhalation that was the ghost of one. The smallest, most genuine smile touched the corner of his mouth, a crack in the perfect facade that let the light in. Negotiations, he said, his thumb stroking the back of my hand, may commence. The final image wasn't a kiss. It was us, later, at two linked desks in the new, sunlit, I insisted, Office of Soul Integration and Care. I was sketching a soul mentorship program on a digital whiteboard, arguing for the inclusion of pets. At his desk, Matthew, his suit jacket abandoned and his sleeves rolled up, ran projections on its long-term efficiency gains. Every few minutes, he'd look up from his data slate, his winter gray eyes soft, and just watch me work. We had built something new, not in spite of the bureaucracy, but through its most unexpected, human, and wonderfully corny loophole yet, a love, filed in triplicate, and set to run for all eternity.